Do GLP-1s now have a new quarterback and chief wellness officer to champion their use? Let's find out in this episode. Welcome back to episode 16 of the Believe in Balance podcast. I'm your host, Dave Dancero, and this is a follow-up episode to the last episode we did on GLP-1s, where I announced how the GLP-1 gold rush was officially here now that it was in pill form. And things are heating up fast, and I just wanted to jump in and say that as of today, the recording of this episode on January 12th, we now have a new quarterback for GLP-1s. If you haven't heard, the former New England Patriots quarterback, Tom Brady, who is also known in New England as the GOAT, if you will. Although I love in retirement his new Pizza Hut commercials, the Hut part especially. And I would have loved to see more and hear more about the advancement of TB12 in his retirement. That seems to be not moving forward because he just signed on with eMed, a population health company and self-advertised leading digital health platform for clinically supervised population health management, including GLP-1s. And so they made an announcement earlier today that Tom Brady is going to be their new chief wellness officer for this new venture. So I'm going to read a little bit about the announcement. They announced the 7-time Super Bowl champ Tom Brady has been appointed chief wellness officer, and the appointment reflects a shared commitment to advancing medically guided GLP-1 care grounded in science, adherence, and measurable financial impact, setting a new standard for next generation workforce care. So it goes on to talk about how his, brings in his longstanding dedication to performance and longevity and evidence-based health, i.e., without mentioning, if you don't know Tom, TB12 was his big claim to fame and other marketing and side investment business that he did while he was promoting his longevity on the field. And at its height, it was very popular. But as soon as we retired and moved out of New England, shortly after that, the TB training center over in Patriot Place closed. And I'm not really sure. I don't follow up. I don't know where they are and stand around the country. But this was pretty much planned to be my last discussion around GLPs, because the focus of this podcast is about achieving balance and believing in balance. And when it is hard, and I think this is absolutely related to what I do today in my current professional life, because of my background in nutrition and wellness and prevention, long before I became a physical therapist and start to incorporate those pillars into my private practice. But, why does this concern me? Because now with Tom as chief wellness officer, they claim that they're going to be doing things differently. So I actually reached out to them because if you listen to the last episode, I talked about, missing out on the preventative side, or if all this programming and marketing to GLPs, that's the next holy grail in weight loss, if we're not looking at what's being lost in the long term, where's the off-ramp? I think I left it with the last episode. Then we're really setting ourselves up for massive failure like we've never seen. And again, I speak of this from experience because I've been in this field for over 30 years. If you include my undergrad work and private practice work in nutrition before I spent 25 years working in PT and private practice. And I've seen so many programs come and go. And in my Chi Balance course, you probably heard me talk about the fen-phen craze in the 1990s and the current GLP-1, craze now. They share similarities in their explosive popularity and the promise of effective weight loss, but they differ significantly in safety profiles, the mechanism of action, their long-term use, and sort of the regulatory status right now. And again, the fen-phen craze didn't have social media behind it, so things are dramatically accelerated and blowing up, to the point where every social influencer is touting these miracle weight loss drugs and how they'll change the world in your life. So let's just I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I'll break down the differences between that fen-phen craze and the GLP-1 craze, and the other celebrities that have jumped on board, including Serena Williams, influencer, pro tennis player, and now I think sound down with Roe, and you see her all over TV during sporting events, and I'm sure during the Olympics you'll see even more of her. And Oprah, who you all know from her weight loss struggles, and now GLP-1s have a component in with their Weight Watchers program. So everyone's trying to compete and stay up with what is selling. But my point is, when my wife and I were first starting out, both as dietitians in private practice, we were approached by a prominent private practitioner at the time who wanted to start marketing fen-phen to his practice. And there were so many people. The hype was at its peak, and there were so many people trying to get in the game, if you will. And it just didn't sit right for my wife and I. And of course, when we're starting out, we're looking to attract new business. And the angle that this particular doc wanted was us to both provide some type of nutrition counseling, so he wouldn't get his hand slapped basically and say, I'm just prescribing, because there was sort of a behavioral change component. So we thought long and hard about it and who we would associate. While at the time we knew he was a very popular doc in the area that our practice was, we decided not to align with him. And I just, we went with our own guts. And, especially now as GLP, no pun intended, but as GLPs now work on the gut, the fen-phen thing didn't sit well for us. And it turned out that when that craze crashed in the 1990s, there were all kinds of safety concerns, things from heart valve damage to pulmonary hypertension, to eventually it was withdrawn from the market. But I'm glad we did not get involved. But it's always been hard to not look at, patients over profit. And although, we probably could have done well, I'm so blessed and thankful that, we weren't associated with that. And, didn't seem to hurt the doc. He later went on to become medical director and had a full career, and other docs just moved on and said, that didn't work for my practice, but a lot of patients did pay the price. So when we look at the key difference and similarities, there are two different medication types, but fen-phen was, if you don't know, was a combination of fenfluramine and phentermine. And phentermine is a stimulant. Fenfluramine affects serotonin receptors, whereas GLP-1 in this current class craze is a class of drugs including, as I mentioned in the last episode, semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy, and I never can say this word, but tirzepatides, and those are the classes of Mounjaro and Zepbound. But the mechanism is different too, supposedly. For fen-phen, it was an appetite suppressant via the central nervous system stimulation, whereas GLP mimics natural hormones to regulate blood sugar, slow digestion, and increase feelings of fullness. and satiety. By the way, exercise does that too, just on the side. Efficacy. The difference with fen-phen, it was effective for weight loss. They said around 15% of body weight, whereas GLPs, they're saying they're highly effective, with some of the studies, as I mentioned, showing 15-20% or more reduction in body weight loss. Body weight loss, not fat-free versus adipose loss, or muscle versus extra body fat. So safety concerns, as I mentioned, down the road they found out that, there were people that died. Pulmonary hypertension was one that was a critical side effect, that, as well as the heart valve damage issues that led to this combination of drugs being removed from the market. And whereas now the GLP-1s, the side effects are primarily gastrointestinal. People that complain of nausea, constipation, sometimes GI blockages. Beside the Ozempic face and the other changes that people report to their face, and sometimes other things, at this point there appear to be no red flags reported. And it is important to point out here that GLP-1s are not new. They've been around for about 20 years, but mostly in the management of diabetes treatment. And that's, where things differ when we look at just what weight loss and the craze, talking about like social media influencers and everyone being paid to profit potentially by making referrals. And again, I'm not making any parallels here with Tom Brady and his recent efforts to quarterback this issue, but I just want to maybe set the record straight on how maybe their program is going to differ, or is it just a bigger celebrity now championing this cause? So, just to finish up, the regulatory status, as I let you know, like eventually for fenfluramine and phentermine or fen-phen, it was recalled. It took up until like 7 years. In 1997, it was recalled. And the FDA now, as far as regulatory status for GLPs now, is supposedly to be regulated for chronic weight management and eligible individuals. And that's the big issue, is who is eligible. You can't have a conversation. You can't go into a room. In fact, years ago, as I commented during one of my workshops, that they even joked that, I think it was at the Golden Globes, that Ozempic had literally had an open seat at the table because so many celebs were on it. And it goes to the point of the duration of use, and where is that off-ramp, and the cost. Often, with fen-phen, it was supposed to be you would use it often for short-term use, and then there was an off-ramp there. Well, it got banned and it got withdrawn from the market. But with GLP-1s, the big difference is it's intended for long-term or lifelong use. And the weight regain typically occurs if stopped. We know that. In fact, in my local market, we just had a piece on the nightly news where the weight loss returned at 4 times the rate as if someone was not following the same program, but without the medication. So cost and access, certainly, generally fen-phen was affordable. At the time, it was even widely available, but had to be prescribed through medical channels for approved use. Whereas right now, GLP-1s are very expensive. And in the last episode 15, I talked about, what those costs are, and I did a comparison with rehab services and how folks were using those with and without insurance. And now the numbers will certainly change, and the opportunities for other providers to get on board, like this eMed, now affiliated with Tom Brady, will accelerate use and adoption because there were, not only will pill forms lower the cost, but there were just a whole class of people, and some of my patients included, who admit now they're thinking about trying them because they don't have to, they can be over the fear of having to administer a shot. So, a pill, syringe, all the things that go along with managing that medication, whereas now just a daily pill, that brings down the cost even without insurance, and certainly coverage still varies. But I do know we cannot, as a healthcare system that's already crumbling, we can't afford to add this on to everyone's insurance plans. There's some estimates that in 2024, 40% of employer-sponsored programs were covering this full boat, but others went outside and tried to satisfy their clients or their employees by going directly to compounding pharmacies and other things. You hear all kinds of stories. But the public perception, my last thing is that I want to focus on and end with today, is that it is definitely, the craziness here is definitely driven by celebrity and social media attention. But it is backed by some clinical evidence, but we do not know this growing understanding that we think we have now of obesity as a chronic disease. We still have to have an off-ramp of some point. And I don't know where that is, but I'm just talking about it from, trying to reiterate the point. And again, I mentioned this is it. This is the last time I'll bring up GLP-1s. I am going to be appearing on a crossover podcast with, I believe it's called Nurse Rosa Speaks. My article in last podcast sparked some interest in her bringing up this as a topic for her audience, and I'm glad to talk and share the PT perspective and also sort of my lessons learned from being on this sort of weight loss roller coaster with folks trying to understand how their body works and to believe in their own balance as they move forward. But you can't go anywhere now, and especially now, wait till we see the marketing is going to happen around this. Now that today's news that Tom is signed on, I opened my mail, and I don't know, maybe because I was thinking about it, but I just opened my mail today at my lunch break, opened a Valpak mailer, which I usually throw directly in the trash, and the first thing I saw on the inside of the envelope was an advertisement for Stop Dieting, Start Weight Care, and lose weight with our physician-led GLP programs at a reduced price, where they're showing they can support your GLP weight loss needs for $110 a month versus regularly $300 to $500 per month for a program to get you started. And that's the important part that we're not also talking about, is the dosage level. Many programs that come online start you and price you at the lowest dose. And I know personally from patients telling me this, and also friends and family talking about the frustration with the level they start at. Maybe it's 5 milligrams going up to triple that sometimes as things start to plateau. So let's have that conversation. I'll also let you know, we'll have another episode on GLP-1s if the Brady camp gets back to me and they want to talk about this. I'm happy to talk about all things TB12 as well and what happened there. But as they advertise this foundation, which is central to eMed's success in the partnership with Tom Brady and GLP-1s, it must be delivered responsibly and in partnership with folks who have a more effective and affordable way to deliver that care. So let's talk about it. And I'm going to get back to things that I enjoy doing more in terms of talking about balance. In our next episode of Believe in Balance, you'll hear the normal opening jingle, and we'll talk more about the new program features that I've added after the first workshop and how I'm going to scale that to reach more folks who want to believe in their balance. But this is all part of it, so I figured let me just share that news today, because you're going to be hearing in the news, and you're going to be, in addition to seeing TB12 or the GOAT, Tom Brady, doing Pizza Hut during the Super Bowl, you're probably going to maybe see his face marketed by eMed as the new face and chief wellness officer, or the new quarterback to lead and champion GLP-1 use. So that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay well, stay on your feet, and keep moving forward. Support for the show at the moment comes entirely from my own pockets. So the way you can help is to head over to Substack and subscribe to my Achieve Balance or No Stroke podcasts and newsletters. If you like a post or something resonates, comment, share, restack, or like. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please subscribe and consider leaving me a review. Thank you.